Anthropic put a huge bet on agent skills, and here's why. What they found was Claude Code, their agent harness, which handles context management, memory, tools, wasn't just good for coding, but in general, great for agents. Essentially, Claude Code, the agent harness, Anthropic found it to be a good fit for any agent system, thus created the world's first general purpose agent. We see this in action today as Claude Code Agent SDK was recently renamed to just Agent SDK. They did this to better signal to the market that this harness is a general purpose agent, not just good for coding, but all around. But how does this relate to agent skills? Anthropic envisions the general purpose agent harness to be the operating system, and agent skills becomes the new app. Skills will leverage features of Claude Agent, the context management, the memory, and the tools, the undifferentiated parts of the agent system. Skills are a higher level abstraction that focuses on bringing expertise of specific tasks/domains to the underlying LLMs. You see, LLMs are great at reasoning, but are not trained on your specific domain or task, and that is where skills come in. Agent skills is now a standard, and others like Microsoft and Windsurf, etc., have already quickly adopted this. Anthropic is all in. They made agent skills available in their API, Agent SDK, and of course, Claude Code. Anywhere you're building with Claude, they envision agent skills to be at the heart of it. But how does it work? It's dead simple. Literally just files and optional deterministic code. The magic is in how these files are organized to maximize progressive disclosure. Progressive disclosure is the number one context engineering technique. There are two parts to progressive disclosure. One, the description with the pointer. The description describes the context. Note that the description is purposely small and is used by the LLM to decide if it needs to read in the full context it's pointing to. The pointer is the file path to the full context described. The second part is external context. This is the full context. This is the detailed information only read into the coding agent's context window when the agent determines its critical information needed for the current problem at hand. Here's how agent skills uses progressive disclosure. First, the front matter is the only part that the agent skill that gets loaded into the agent's context window upon start. It is used to decide if it needs to trigger the skill.md and load the rest of the body, which is much bigger. The body itself can have pointers to resources. This is more dense content, or to deterministic tools like scripts. The big takeaway is this. Agent skills progressively discloses information. First, a small description in the front matter. Then next, if triggered, the skill.md body. And then if needed, the dense resources. Claude Code gets to decide how much or how little context is pulled in from the agent skill. That's the true magic. But how does this work with an existing feature of Claude Code? Anthropic says it works nicely with existing features, but in reality, agent skill is now king. Let's take a look. Slash commands. Claude Code has eliminated slash commands. Your existing slash commands will continue to still work, but going forward, you should use skills. Skills versus subagent. Skills can run as a subagent using context fork in the front matter. Subagent used to be a standalone feature, but now it really is more of a sub-feature of skills. Skills versus ClaudeMD. ClaudeMD, or memory files, will run on every conversation automatically, so only put context that makes sense for every conversation. Skills, on the other hand, they run on demand when Claude Code decides to use it. Skills versus MCP. This is interesting. Both skills and MCPs are experts and have domain knowledge that the model wasn't trained on. They both extend Claude Code's capability by bringing in expertise. Currently, Anthropic recommends to use MCP when you're connecting to an external system like Slack or a database, and to use skills when dealing with any other domain knowledge extension of Claude Code you want to do. But I question, why couldn't I write deterministic code to connect to my database or connect to Slack and reference that in the agent skill? Furthermore, you can reference an MCP server in an agent skill, but you can't reference a skill in MCP. To me, there definitely seems to be a little bit of overlap in this functionality. And I personally plan on using external companies' MCP servers like Microsoft's Playwright. But internally, and pretty much anything else, I will always default to creating agent skills. This all sounds good in theory, but what does this look like in practice? How do you create an agent skill? Let's do a demo. Notice how my description is short and to the point. This follows progressive disclosure best practices. Let's look at the body of my skill.md. I'm a believer in setting just guidelines. Use guidelines, set goals, and give output structure, but never overly prescribe solutions as you risk pigeonholing Claude Code. As AI gets better, the guidelines and goal approach will improve as the model improves, whereas the strict step-by-step over-prescriptive approach, you will never get this benefit. Now, let's take a look at how I point to resources. Notice in the available XCaliDraw library visual section, I only point to dense content rather than putting all that context in the skill MD body itself. I describe what the libraries contain and let Claude Code decide if it wants to use the library or not. This again follows progressive disclosure best practices. Notice I got a little fancy with the retrieval of this resource's data. I wrote a deterministic tool to only fetch an item from the dense resource library file instead of the whole file itself. This saves me tons of tokens and preserves Claude Code's context window. Furthermore, I use deterministic code to allow the skill to validate itself. This self-validation is a concept I like to call signal, a way to have AI discover if it's on the right track while it's iterating. This is a powerful technique that leads to more predictable and higher quality results. The process of building a skill is iterative. Start small. In fact, don't even start with the skill. Just see how plain Claude Code handles the task. You will then see where it's failing and needs expert advice. Only then should you start with a minimalistic skill. Only add complexity when you truly see a problem that needs solving. So many times, and I'm guilty too, engineers tend to over-engineer. We add complexity before the problem even happens, which is wrong in any engineering practice. But especially for agent skills, where less is truly more. Agent skills needs context management and allowing the underlying model to apply its reasoning freely and not restricting its capabilities by giving overly prescriptive step-by-steps. Now in the future, Claude Codes plans on adding composability and testing to agent skills. Currently, there is a degree of composability. For example, in one of my iterations of this skill, I created a secondary skill that ran as a subagent, which was triggered while in this main skill. However, composability isn't a first-class feature just yet. I imagine soon, though, you will start seeing composable or something of that nature in the front matter of the skill. Also, testing currently is just about vibes. You run it, you see how it does, and based on your instincts, you tweak it until you're satisfied. Claude plans on heavily improving the testability of skills. We're just not there yet. So, agent skills definitely is a tactical for every engineer to learn, but the real winners in AI will focus on first principles. That is context engineering. You can apply context engineering to your everyday agentic coding. And in the next video, I will talk about a concept called context specs. Context specs is a form of spec-driven development that applies context engineering. Every decision made in context specs is reasoned up from context engineering, as it truly is a first principle. So I'll see you there in that next video.